With preseason games upon us, who amongst the New York Giants players needs to help their cause these next 3 weeks? Locked On Giants starts now.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Trainer, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all my written work. And as always, we welcome on in our Blue Crew community members, our everydayers, our newcomers, and everybody in between. And we thank you for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And if you make us your first listen of the day, we thank you for that as well. All right, Giant fans, we got a lot to cover today. Joining me is good friend Ed Valentine of Big Blue View. I told you he was going to come back for more. I can't get rid of this guy, but that's okay. We love him here on the Locked On Giants podcast.
I love punishment, Patty. I love punishment.
You must, I'm telling you. But anyway, Giant fans, so on today's show, we're going to talk about some general camp impressions that Ed has had and I've had as well. Concerns, and then we're going to spin it forward in segment 3. We're going to kind of with Buffalo, the first preseason game coming up this weekend. We'll talk a little bit about that, what we want to see, what we expect to see, and so forth. So again, welcome into everybody. Welcome into Ed. Ed, let's jump into it. So the Giants now, what is this now? 2 full weeks they're in, or just about 2 weeks of camp?
About 2 weeks, week and a half. They've been through. Tomorrow will be practice number 10. Monday will be practice number 10.
I lose track of the days when it comes to summer training camp. I don't know about you. But anyway, Ed, what are some of your thoughts on what we've seen? A lot of excitement about this team, the direction, the personnel, and whatnot. What is your initial takeaway? Keeping in mind, obviously, that they haven't been in pads every day, that, things have been scripted. But from what you have seen, what has you most encouraged about the coming year?
Well, I do think there's reason for optimism, Patty. I think what has me most encouraged, I would say is 2 things. I think that the defense has an opportunity to be really, really good. And now Dexter Lawrence keeps saying it. All the name guys, Brian Burns has said it. Bobby Okereke has said it. They have to go out on the field and show it. They have to prove it. But, but the defense has a chance to be really, really good. And they gave up 24.5 points a game last year, which was 20th in the league. There's really not much reason based on their personnel that they can't get to 20 or 21, which puts them in the top 10. And if they're in the top 10 in defense, whatever their schedule is, they should have an opportunity to be in almost every game that they play. So that has me optimistic. And obviously we've talked about it over and over, but I think they're going to get better quarterback play. And if they get better quarterback play, they should do better than 15.5 points a game. So so there's a lot of reason to be optimistic, and yet, it's, you got to go out there, you got to play the games, you got to stop committing pre-snap penalties. And I asked Brian Daboll about that the other day because for about the first 6 or 7 practices, he didn't say much of anything about the pre-snap penalties. And you saw practice just like I did, and there have been far too many. And the last couple of practices, he's been more demonstrative. He's been replacing guys that committed those. And yeah, they're a young team, but Patty, they lost 2 games to Washington by 8 points last year. And a lot of that was their own silly mistakes. And they're not going to have much of a margin for error this year. You can't commit those penalties. I've been glad to see Daboll sort of ratcheting up the heat on guys a little bit, when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm with you. Matter of fact, I did a breakdown on New York Giants on SI pre-snap penalties. How many of those led to stalled drives last year? And you're right. I mean, they're not good enough to overcome those mistakes. So that's definitely something. And I'm with you. I'm glad that Dable is finally, holding guys' feet to the fire, so to speak, something we really didn't see a whole lot of when mistakes were made. It was kind of shrugged off as, oh, it's a mistake, we'll correct it. So I'm glad to see that for sure. Now, Ed, on the flip side, from what you have seen, what still has you a little bit maybe concerned, or that you still have questions about?
Well, I keep hearing people question the run defense, Patty, and I'm sorry, even in these padded practices, to me, you still can't really judge the run defense because they're not bringing guys to the ground, and you still see running backs continuing down the field after they might have been stopped. So I couldn't tell you right now how good or how bad the run defense has been in these practices, but what I know is that the talent up in that front seven is a lot better, and there's no excuse for it not to be better. But I would say, really, two things have me concerned on the defensive side of the ball. It looks like Tay Banks is going to win that cornerback one job at this point. Not that he necessarily deserves it or has earned it, but Cordale Flott has been missing practice time of late with an injury. And I'm sorry, the last two practices that I have been in attendance for, what I saw from Tay Banks was very discouraging. One practice, I saw him commit a defensive pass interference in the end zone on a deep shot when everybody at Quest Diagnostics except Tay, I think, knew the ball was in the air. And he had no idea where it was, no idea how to find it. And then later in the practice, he committed a defensive pass interference. And then on Saturday, in one-on-one drills, he committed a defensive pass interference where I don't remember who the receiver was, but basically one step off the line of scrimmage and Tay had both hands wrapped around the guy's waist. And then on his next rep, Malik Neighbors blew right by him for a long touchdown. And it just looks to me, the more I watch Tay, the more it just looks to me like he hasn't learned anything. He's just, and that's discouraging because the one thing really with him is find the football. And he just seems unable to do it. So that's discouraging. And I don't know what the answer is because, as they say, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And if there's an obvious weak link in that secondary, that's a problem. And as much as, now I wrote on Big Blue View, I wrote today about James Hudson. Okay. And I love the fire. I love the passion. I love the energy. I love the play to the echo of the whistle with James Hudson. And I talked to him the other day. Like, I love the enthusiasm, all of that. But the Giants still need to see Andrew Thomas play. And the Giants can say all that they want about, oh, we're just being smart with him and he's making progress and he's getting a little bit better. And to me, Brian Dable said the most discouraging thing that he said the other day about Andrew Thomas. He said something to the effect of, he's getting better week by week. He's getting better week by week. He's getting there. He'll be on the field when he's ready to be on the field. And I don't know, just the tone of that and the phrasing of what Dable said was discouraging to me. And as much as I love James Hudson, he's not Andrew Thomas, and that's a problem if Andrew Thomas isn't ready to play. So it's that cornerback spot for me, and it's the lack of Andrew Thomas being on the practice field that's bugging me right now.
Yeah, that two legitimate concerns. Just to your point about the run defense, though, one of the things that I know I've been concerned with watching the padded practices, guys aren't getting off of blocks. And that, that's something they can do. And we just don't see enough of that. And right now, who would you say is going to be the start on that defensive line alongside of Dexter right now? I mean, it's just nobody's really jumped out and said, "Hey, this is my job." You know?
No, I don't know who that's going to be, Patty. I mean, if we're talking about three defensive linemen, I think Roy Robertson Harris is probably going to be one of those guys. We saw Darius Alexander, the third round pick, get some first team reps the last couple practices. I think we might see that continue for him to get more reps. Nacho always gets a lot of first team reps. But the only other thing, and again, for me, why it's a little bit hard to judge the run defense, Dexter Lawrence hasn't taken a lot of snaps in team periods. So you're not looking at the defensive line, with Dexter out there commanding a double team. So there's that, just as a caveat. And I would agree with you. They need some of these hand in the ground defensive linemen. We're not talking about Abdul Carter and Brian Burns and even Chauncey Golston, but we're talking about the hand in the ground guys. Some of those guys, like Roy Robertson Harris and like Elijah Chapman and Darius Alexander and Rakeem Nunez Roches, a couple of those guys really do need to step up. And it's a good question right now as to which ones will.
Right. All right. Coming up next, got more with Ed Valentine. We'll talk about some of the good things that we have seen at camp. That's coming up right after this. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning up things with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, I'm playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. Whether you're all in on something new or you like sticking to head-to-head leagues or jumping into public leagues, Yahoo's got you covered. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now is the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. My guest is Ed Valentine of Big Blue View. And Ed, let's talk about, we kind of got into the negatives in that last segment, but let's talk a little bit about the positives. The quarterback play, you mentioned that at the start of the show. Jackson Dart, all eyes have been on him. The receiver competition, I think, has been a positive. What are some of your thoughts as to what you have seen from the quarterbacks and the receivers?
Well, let's just say this. I mean, I think I'm going to start with Jackson Dart, who's obviously going to be, he's not going to start week one. I had an interesting conversation with defensive back Nick Jones the other day about Dart. And Patty, if you recall, the first 3 or 4 practices, it was Nick Jones more or less tormenting Jackson Dart. A pick 6 on Dart's first 11-on-11 throw in training camp, couple of sacks, couple of passes defensed. And those two guys have kind of become fast friends. Or maybe since they're on opposite sides of the ball, maybe we call them frenemies. But whatever you want to call them, I talked to Nick Jones about Dart, and he said, on a day-to-day basis, it's getting harder and harder for me to pick up things from him. It's getting harder and harder for me to time my blitzes, off of his cadence and the way he's handling the line of scrimmage. And it's getting harder and harder for me to read him. He said the first day he knew exactly where Dart was throwing the ball because he could follow Dart's eyes. And he said it's getting harder and harder for him to do things like that. So you want to talk about something that's encouraging, and that's not encouraging for week one, but obviously Jackson Dart is the future of the Giants. And so you want to see improvement. And just based on, we're seeing it on the field. I think we're seeing it on the field. But based on what a guy like Jones is telling us, then that's some confirmation that what we're seeing would be real. So that's a good thing. The way that, and we see Russell Wilson and the receivers, doing, it looks like he's building a good relationship at this point with Malik Neighbors. It hasn't taken him long to figure out that that's where the ball should go whenever possible. And, so that's good. I worried a little bit about how their connection would be because Malik didn't practice in the spring. But, silly me. I shouldn't have really worried about that. And Patty, just as an aside, we can all talk about, is Malik a diva? Is Malik this? Does he say the right things all the time? Do we wish he wouldn't say this or that or whatever? Give the kid some credit. He came off the field on Tuesday, with what looked like a shoulder injury and left practice. Then on Thursday morning, Brian Daboll says, he'll do stuff. Like he'll do a little bit of stuff. He'll be out here jogging around and whatever. He took every 11 on 11 rep on Thursday. He was blowing by defensive backs. He did the same thing on Saturday, when I was there again. I mean, this kid doesn't take time off. This kid plays hurt, and you don't want him playing hurt in training camp. But this kid gives you what he has. And what I said the other day at Big Blue View is I said, that's leadership. That's the best player on your offense, setting the standard for what's expected. If you can be on the field, be on the field. And I love that.
You raise a good point, Ed. Something that was missing, and I wrote about this over on New York Giants on SI, and I spoke about it on my show here on Locked On Giants. The Giants had veterans. They've had veterans every year, but just because you have veterans, you don't necessarily have guys who are leaders. Some guys just aren't cut out to be leaders. I think this year, and tell me if you disagree or agree, this year you can go from position group to position group. They've got leaders at every single position group, guys who are showing the younger guys, the less experienced guys, the way, how to be pros. Would you agree with that?
I would, Patty. And for me, it's an example of Joe Shane is now a fourth-year general manager in the NFL. And Joe would be the first one to tell you that he's made some mistakes. But for me, I think it's an example of where Joe has grown and learned. I think he realized, because the Giants over the last couple of years, they shed a lot of talent. And some of those guys they tried to keep, and Saquon and Xavier McKinney and Julian Love, if you want to talk about all of those guys, a lot of talented players who were key figures in the locker room left. And there really weren't. Joe said way back at the Combine that he wanted a leader in every room. A veteran leader in every room. And he admitted there wasn't one in a lot of those rooms last year. This year, I don't think that's the case. Even Devin Singletary in the running back room still, who people say, he's only the third running back. But he's a veteran guy who's done it all, seen it all. All of those rooms now have veteran guys that have been around and who are really good in the locker room. So yeah, I definitely think that's a positive in terms of the way that this roster's built. The other thing, Patty, if you think about Joe Shane and you think about the kind of players that he's brought in, and we talk about Kayvon Thibodeau being not exactly what you would hope for from the number 5 overall pick, from the first guy you pick as a general manager to start your franchise rebuild, but he's still a good player. And the one thing we knew about Kayvon from the beginning is Kayvon's a big personality. He's got some swag. He's got some attitude. The Giants, Jackson Dart has swag. He has attitude that people talk about. James Hudson has attitude. I don't know how good of a player James Hudson is, but he has attitude. And this football team has some attitude now. With Malik, with Malik has some attitude. Dart has some attitude. Cam Scattaboo has attitude. And I don't know if Joe and Brian Daboll have done it on purpose, but they certainly haven't shied away from personalities and guys with a little swag to them and a little, just that little extra personality. And maybe that's a good thing for the football team. It's been a very vanilla, quiet team for quite a while.
Yeah, for sure. Ed, somebody who we haven't really talked about in terms of growth after, you just got through talking about Joe's growth. Let's talk about Brian Daboll's growth, and what have you seen from him that has you encouraged that maybe, things are going to get better?
Well, Patty, the biggest thing that I am encouraged by, and Brian hasn't made it official yet, but he's not calling plays. Okay, he's letting Mike Kafka call the offense. He's heavily involved because he's always around Jackson Dart. But when you watch Daboll at practice now, it reminds me more of the Daboll that we saw in 2022, where he was sort of, I don't know if omnipresent is the right word, but you look up and he's over there talking to the linebackers, and you look up and he's over there watching the offensive line drills. Then you look up and he's over there talking to the kickers and, or whatever, but he's not solely focused on his radio and his offense. And it feels more like he's coaching the football team. There was a photo that I saw the other day of him coaching Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau and Abdul Carter, who the three of them stick together like glue. They go everywhere together during practice. But he was over there obviously coaching up those guys. And I not only got a kick out of that, but I was like, this is better. Because you see the head coach making his way to everybody. And that much I like. Who knows what it will translate to, but that much I like.
I am 100% with you, and I'm so glad you cited that, because I thought last year Daboll might have been stretched a little too thin. He was, so involved with the offense, and there's only so many hours a day. And, we've talked about the idea of being a CEO-style head coach and how that allows you to delegate and also be everywhere that you need to be. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because that, to me, the last couple of years, I question whether Daboll might give up the play calling, because he's very proud. He's a proud man and he likes doing it. Mm-hmm. But it really wasn't for the better, the better of the team, I thought.
And in all honesty, Patty, I mean, it's early in the year, but even just in dealing with us, and Brian doesn't give us a whole lot, but I've felt like he's not quite as much on edge. And maybe that's because it's early and no games have been played and all of that, but it just doesn't feel like he's quite as much on edge as what I remember from last year. I should be mad at him though, because he picked on me the other day when I had my bucket hat on, and he came by and he picked on me. Oh. He's like, I should be mad at him though, but anyway.
Job. I should be mad at him. That's my job to pick on you.
I know.
All right, gentlemen. We've got one more segment coming up. We're going to spin it ahead. Preseason games start this weekend. The Giants at Buffalo. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hey, Giant fans, ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So, in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. With Monarch Money, I've been able to get a complete glance at my household spending all in one easy to use app. This helps with budgeting and planning, not just for the upcoming week, but also for the short and long-term savings. Take control of your finances today with Monarch Money. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com to get 50% off your first year. Again, that's monarchmoney.com, and that code is LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Trainer, and I'm with Ed Valentine. And Ed, this weekend, we're finally going to see something that looks like real football. It's preseason, it's exhibition. It's going to be vanilla, but it's going to be live reps. What are you most looking forward to seeing this weekend when the Giants visit Buffalo?
Well, Patty, of course, we're going to see Jackson Dart play against somebody else for the first time. Brian Daboll hasn't told us anything about playing time yet and probably won't tell us anything until late in the week, if he tells us anything at all. But you probably would say the same thing. I think we'll see Jackson Dart play a half. And I'm looking forward to seeing that. But I don't, the whole thing, Patty, with preseason for me, and you have banged this drum forever. How much are these starters going to play? All right, how much are they going to play? Look, the saying is that to get ready to play football, you have to play football, which means you have to hit somebody else. You have to get tackled. You have to play. You have to have live reps. And what is Brian Daboll going to do about 68-6? Okay, which is the score of the week one games the last 2 years. What is Brian Daboll going to do about the fact that you go all the way back to the Tennessee game in 2022, which the Giants won with a nice comeback? What is Brian Daboll going to do about the fact that in 3 week one games in his tenure, the Giants have scored 3 points in the first half? What's he going to do about that? Is he going to get his starting offensive players on the field a little bit more? Is he going to get first team guys more reps, or is he just going to do what we've always done, and roll the ball out there and hope that because the Giants have more talent that they'll play a little bit better in week one? So for me, I'm just really curious to see if he changes anything about the way he handles the preseason. More so than the results, and more so than watching this player or that player. I am insanely curious about how he handles the preseason.
As am I. I mean, usually if there's no joint practice, he'll get the guys out there. So you would like to think he's going to get the guys out there, even if it's just for, a couple of series, a quarter or whatever. But Ed, what about position groups? What position groups are you most looking forward to seeing, especially given the competition at those groups?
Well, Patty, I think there's so much competition for the last couple of roster spots. Okay. Bo Collins has been getting some first team reps. Montrell Washington has had his moments in practice. Dalen Cambray is a guy that I think you and I have both talked about, undrafted free agent who is really on that roster because of what he did on special teams in college. And we'll get a chance to see that on Saturday. And there's an opening for a wide receiver who can play special teams because of the injury to Bryce Ford Wheaton. So I'm really, really curious to see who steps forward in that competition. We talked a little bit about the defensive line. The Giants probably have, if they keep six defensive linemen, and they may only keep five, I don't know. But you can make an argument for about 8 different guys. So I'm curious to see how that shakes out. The last couple of spots on the at cornerback, I'm curious to see how that shakes out. You might even argue about the last couple spots on the offensive line. So it's that last 8 to 10 spots on the roster, Patty, that you're really, really looking at in over these couple of games, just in terms of competitions.
And then finally, Ed, if there's one area or one person that right now is kind of sneaking up on you and maybe the coaches and whatnot, who are you looking at as that, if you will, dark horse, somebody who, if in your initial roster projections, you didn't even think to give him a spot, and now maybe he's making a strong enough case for a spot?
Well, I probably go back to the wide receivers, Patty. I go back to Bo Collins, Dalen Cambray, one of those guys. Daquan Felton hasn't, to me anyway, hasn't jumped out as much lately as I hoped he might. But I come back to those guys, and I come back to to the end of the roster guys at cornerback: Nick Jones, D. Williams, Corey Black, the 7th round pick. Can one of those guys step forward and really earn a roster spot?
Well, we are going to find out. Sure enough, it'll be here before we know it. We are finally getting into the games. And Ed, we're just rolling right along this summer. Plenty of stuff still to cover on Big Blue View, on the Locked On Giants podcast, on New York Giants, on SI. Giant fans, make sure you check out New York Giants on SI. We put up a pass rush plan. Coach Gene has a pass rush plan that you have to check out. He really did a good job on that. All right. Now, before we say goodbye, we want to thank you for making the Locked On Giants podcast part of your day today. If it was your first listen, thank you for that. For your next listen, check out Locked On Bets. Betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rodgers have daily MLB locks and can't miss football futures. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget, check out Ed Valentine's work over on Big Blue View, as well as Big Blue View on YouTube. For Ed Valentine, I'm Patricia Traina. Giant fans, we'll see you again tomorrow.